history of human civilization ever since the birth of science, or even back in time, ever since the Renaissance. Because I believe the Renaissance was the watershed in human civilization, wherein man turned his attention away from the other world to this world and came up with the slogan, or the defining idiom, the defining slogan of man is the architect of his destiny. Is man really the central person, the pivotal person, and does he or woman, she, deserve the kind of attention that he or she has got? As far as the Western philosophical point of view goes, the entire paradigm of Western thought, particularly Enlightenment thought, has evolved into this kind of a position. And we suffered the ill effects or the adverse effects of this kind of an ideology when nature hit back, because we started what was called a mindless process of exploitation of nature.
Right.
And it was then that the Western man woke up and he coined a new term, sustainable development. He had kept the spotlight of attention for far too long a time on himself, and it had made the world, as has been said by some philosophers, as androcentric. Androcentric, this word becomes all the more significant because when it came to man versus nature, it was man. When it came to man versus the rest of humankind, it was again man, and woman, the other half who constituted one half of this human universe, was again marginalized, considered the second sex, the inferior person. And in this context, yes, the androcentric word was very appropriate. But if you compare and this kind of philosophy with the Eastern view, and when I say Eastern, I think it's a little simplistic to say Eastern, because this kind of an ideology is not something which is endemic only to the East. It was there in all ancient civilizations. Whether those civilizations flourished in Central America, or in Central Asia, or in China, or here in India. So this dichotomy also which was created, wherein it was said that anything that happened before the birth of science was prehistory, not even qualifying to be history, and only what happened after the birth of science was history, was taking a position far too extreme. This was an extremist point of view. And when we go back to these ancient civilizations, they happened much before the modern science or Western science emerged. In all these ancient civilizations, as in that of India, there was always an integral cosmological viewpoint, wherein it was considered that every part of this cosmos has its ordained place and its ordained role. Just as in the human body, we have different organs, different parts. None can say that I am more important. Not even the brain, not even the mind can say that I am far more important and I don't need the legs. And I recall here a very stupid kind of a statement once telecast over by one of the TV channels, wherein the reporter went to that priest in Banaras and he asked him, why do you consider Shudra not worthy, a person as Shudra, and consider him as an outcast and not worthy of entering the temple precincts? And this man says, refers to the Purush Sukta of the Ved and says that the Shudra was born out of the feet. Can anyone keep his feet on his head? And here, the temple precincts are the most sacred part of life. So how does one bring in one's shoes inside the temple? So how can one allow such a person to enter the temple? A very stupid, a very arrogant kind of an explanation. But I call it stupid because I pity that person. Because that person doesn't realize that the human individual is the sum of all the parts. If the Brahmin was born out of the mind of Brahma and the Shudra was born out of the feet of Brahma, each has its role and each has its equal participation in every action that happens. If man were to get his legs amputated, will the person be able to work? Will the person be able to attend to many of the activities and actions, duties that he or she performs? No. So every organ has a role. Just because somebody is performing, like in modern day societies, somebody is performing the role of a peon, somebody is performing the role of a class 4 employee, does that make that person less important than the person who is organizing all the resources and acting as an entrepreneur or acting as a manager? Everyone has his or her appointed role. And this is exactly what the Eastern or the wisdom of the ancient mystics was. And transpose it from the individual now to the society and the cosmos. It was a very integral worldview in which it was said that the individual, as you were saying earlier, is an infinitesimal part of this cosmos. He is just, or she is just, a speck of dust in this cosmos. So to have this kind of egotistical belief that the world revolves around me and the world is for me and I am the master of this cosmos, of this life, is a delusion.